Hi, this is a video relating to that green circle thing that you see on this yard. The yard is, this is a section that's been landscaped with pine bark mulch, and the green circle thing is the top of a grinder pump. And this kind of looks okay, but this is actually a problem waiting to happen. This grinder pump is from E1, and this cover is on top of the pump, which goes down over 8 feet into the ground underneath here. This cover has a gasket and 3 bolts that are sealing it to the base, the lower part of it. And underneath this cover right here, there are 2 circular vent pipes. One comes from the wet well. That's goes down 8 feet and deeper. And the other one is a vent coming from the dry well, which is the upper portion of the well. Underneath there's a silo here, and the upper portion is called the dry well because there's no water in it. And below that is called the wet well because that's where the water collects. Each of them needs to be vented to the atmosphere, and it's done under this little cover right here. The gasket cutout runs around like this, and it runs around. Okay. Now what can happen is when this grinder pump fails, and it will fail eventually because all grinder pumps fail eventually, and the alarm on the grinder pump will also eventually fail. When it does fail, you can have a situation where the water backs up in the wet well because it's not pumping, and you don't necessarily know that inside the house. Eventually, the water on this can begin overflowing from the vent of the wet well. If it doesn't do that, it will overflow inside the house. So it's more desirable for it to overflow from the cover. Now, there is a requirement on the grading of the land around the grinder pump, and the requirement is that the earth has to slope away from the cover vent area, which is this area. And you'll see that this does not meet that requirement. If you go down, you'll see that this cover is actually below the grade because the grade has been built up. Okay, the grade has been built up by years and years of pine bark application. And in this particular case, it hasn't been covered. Some grinder pump covers actually are simply covered with pine bark mulch. This one, someone has gone to some attention to pull it back from the edge. But actually what they created is a little basin here. When this grinder pump fails, and if there is an overflow at this point, the water will fill up in this area. Now, you don't want that water to go into the wet well, but it will go into the wet well in this case. And one reason is because it's shaped like a basin and this water collects. Now, once the water level builds up to a certain level, it will start overflowing onto the yard. But there's a problem with this, and that is the gasket which is under here is not going to seal properly. And the reason is because if you look at these bolts, you will see they're not seated properly. They don't have a washer under it here, for example, and the bolt is perfectly loose. The reason why this is loose is because there's damage to the nut that it is supposed to be threaded into. Okay, now I have nothing to do with this bolt. I only just pulled it out upon looking at it. Okay. I happen to know that there's damage on these bolts because I know the homeowner in this case. The homeowner has never taken this off. The people who take this off are the grinder pump technicians who do service. And these bolts can fail by getting stripped. Here's a bolt, which you can tell. It's got a washer on it and it's on tight. And here's the third bolt. This one, it seems to be in firmly, but now there's no washer. This one might be stripped, maybe not. I can't tell for sure. I'm not going to bother with it. But because of that, you'll notice that the gasket is not going to seal properly. There's no pressure on the top that this bolt is supposed to be applying. So that means that this dry well is going to fill up with liquid. It's going to be the wastewater from the house. Now, when this failure takes place, the homeowner is going to call Weston & Sampson to do a repair here, but because of the contracts that Weston & Sampson has with the town of Chelmsford, they are not going to pump out that wastewater. They're going to ask the homeowner to remove that wastewater before they can do any work. And that's going to cost that homeowner between $200 and $300, depending on who they get to do that work. This is essentially all unbeknownst to the homeowner at this point because they think everything's fine out here. But there's actually a combination of two problems. The landscaper has not graded this properly. The homeowner is responsible to instruct the landscaper. The landscaper in this case is Marty. I hope Marty can see this so that, because this isn't the only place in Chelmsford where it's like this. This happens a lot. Okay? And the other problem is the technicians with Weston & Sampson have no ability to repair these threads when they become damaged. It's simply not in their toolbox. Now, these threads could be repaired, and the nut could be repaired and should be repaired to bring this back into service. But currently, that's not part of this program, and that's a big problem because this is going to happen. Now, I have a homeowner, not this one, who was at a location where, guess what happened? There was a failure, and the wet well was full, and the technician came, and the technician saw that the bolt was damaged, and he accused the homeowner of damaging the bolt. And the homeowner told him to his face that he was there on the occasion when that was removed by the previous technician who damaged the bolt and never repaired it. And that was done either during an inspection or during a previous repair. And that homeowner had never taken off this cover. And most homeowners would never have any interest in taking off this cover. Okay? So this is two places. This needs to go to Marty in order for him to teach the landscapers about this problem. And the second place, and for those landscaper homeowners who do their own landscaping, they need to also check this because they'll make the same mistake. And then this needs to go to Weston & Sampson. They need to repair these bolts because this is part of the maintenance and repair of this station, okay, which the town of Chelmsford is responsible for doing. And by not doing this, this is a problem that is waiting to happen. It's just an increased cost to the homeowner, and it's not the homeowner's fault. Okay? Thanks, and I'll talk to you next time.